Welcome to our monthly ACTS Town Hall. Thanks to our member companies for helping make these town halls possible. Your support makes our mission a reality. Together in safety, stronger in collaboration. The ACTS Town Halls are an open forum to discuss concerns and present potential solutions to improve damage prevention and excavation safety. These town halls are meant to be a discussion, and you're encouraged to ask questions and share solutions. A recording of this town hall will be posted on our YouTube channel and sent via email after the town hall has concluded. Before the end of the town hall, each of our panelists will highlight a moving forward step to ensure we stay focused on practical and impactful solutions. We are pleased to have a knowledgeable and experienced panel with us today. So to get us started, our moderator will begin with brief introductions.
Morning, everybody. I hope you can see my screen here. I'm Mike Sullivan. I'm the president of Utility Safety Partners. And joining me today are a few of my industry colleagues, Mr. Ian Stables with ATCO Gas, ATCO Energy Systems, Mr. Jeff Mulligan, the CEO of Aztec Safety, and Debbie Shelley, the CEO and Director of Training with Global Training here in Alberta. We're going to be talking to you today about two of our programs, the Alternate Locate Provider Program and the Damage Prevention Professional. So two presentations in one, two for the price of one. And with that, I want to get going right away here. If you have questions, please ask them during the presentation. We'd rather have a dialogue than just a talking head, as we've already talked about with my friends. And that being said, we are being mindful of time too. The first topic is the alternate locate provider, and this is something new in Alberta. And before we get there, though, I give you a quick rundown of damage prevention in Alberta. Alberta One Call Corporation began operations 40 years ago, and we had great partnership with our friends in the U.S. who actually helped us get Alberta One Call going. And in fact, it was Pennsylvania 811 that ran Alberta One Call for 2 seasons before we were able to do that ourselves here in Alberta. Fast forwarding to just recent history, we unified resources with the Alberta Common Ground Alliance and the Where's the Line campaign, which is an overhead power line safety campaign in 2020. And Alberta One Call, after many years operating, changed its name to Utility Safety Partners. There's over 850 buried utility owners that have registered the location of their buried assets with Utility Safety Partners. And that was done in the absence of what we'll call comprehensive damage prevention legislation. There is damage prevention legislation in Alberta, but it only governs transmission pipelines, which are either federally regulated or provincially regulated. One of the feathers in our cap was Utility Safety Partners was the first notification center to seize the merits of online locate requests. We own the Click Before You Dig trademark, and we manage the clickbeforeyoudig.com web portal. If you've ever been there, it's a map of Canada and the US. You simply click on the province or the state where you're working, and you can begin your online locate request process. In Canada, almost 90% of all locate requests across the country originate online. So why create the alternate locate provider? And with this, I'm going to turn this over to my friend Ian to take us through that. Why did we do it, Ian?
Well, essentially, Mike, we did it at a request of the excavation community. They were the ones that were asking for options, different ways to get locates completed. For those that don't know, in Alberta, ATCO, we're partners in what we call a consortium with 11 other utility members, and we contract our locates out to a few vendors. And the only way to get locates completed is by those vendors. But the excavation community really asked us for alternatives going forward. And that's kind of what started the ALP, was us listening to the excavation community. And them asking for an option.
Maybe talk about a little bit about the consortium. What created that? What need created that?
Oh, years ago, the consortium was created for efficiencies to have one locator go out on behalf of all members and do the locate once, as opposed to having 12 different locators show up and excavators having to meet, multiple locators. I think one of the things that we learned over the years is the consortium method of locating, while really good, created its own bottlenecks where
Yeah.
we had limited ability to add additional resources quickly when needed. And for those that know Alberta, we have two seasons, winter and construction seasons. So there's a lot of demand for locates when the weather is favorable for us to be excavating.
Yep. And so with that, I mean, we had the why create the ALP. Now, how did we do it? This was not just a snap your fingers type of thing to get done. This began quite a few years ago, and maybe take us through that, the number of years it took to create this and how we did it.
Oh, I think, Mike, we've been working on this 2.5 years since the idea was born. And I think what we did as utility owners, we recognized that we know utilities really well, but we don't know all the needs, the limitations of the excavation community, the locate community. So what we wanted to do was really engage with all our stakeholders as part of this. So we reached out to USP and, we asked Mike, can you help us with this? Because USP is the place that they engage all the stakeholders across the damage prevention community. And they were able to bring excavators together, locate organizations, training institutes. So, it really was, USP assembling a coalition of the willing to start working through this and come up with a safe way to, apply locates in a different manner.
Now, part of this was identifying the process of how we were going to create the alternate locate provider program. And the idea was that we would lend support and knowledge from another area of ground disturbance training, which in Alberta we have ground disturbance training 101 and 201. And that is the GD 101 and 201 is owned and managed by the Training Standards Committee under Utility Safety Partners. They are their own entity. And Jeff or Debbie, perhaps you can chime in here because, the idea was to create a training standard and maybe explain what that means, the training standard and how it's managed, that whole process.
Deb, you can take a shot at that.
Yeah, you know what? At the training standards, it's all about being able to provide a standardized product across the industry. And so every industry, as it utilizes it, knows the core knowledge or skill that's required in order to get that certification. And as USP has every stakeholder in the game sitting at their table. And they're not, how do I say this? They're not making money off the training itself. What they're doing is bringing the industry stakeholders together to say, what is best practice here? And then that is created into a standard based on all of the industry input. And then the training organizations apply to the standard and are audited to the standard. That standard consists of what are the program contents, how do you manage the standard through everything from an LMS to quality assurance, and then delivery, is it delivered consistently all the time? So the interesting part is that part of this growth pattern was, how do we create standards? How do we put them in the market so that the industry can onboard them, the regulators can onboard them, and so that they're consistent enough that people trust them? And that across the board is what I think that we've gained with the Training Standards Committee, is the trust of the industry that what they're getting what they want, not just something.
Agreed.
And
Utility safety
as
partners.
such, utility safety partners then, out of the Training Standards Committee, what we're doing is defining the content, defining the standard, not trying to build courses. We have professionals that go off and build the courses and deliver them. And then you get a bigger distribution network with a greater level of professional application.
And this was important because we needed to maintain the integrity of locating and marking, whether it was managed by the utility owners or was going through the alternate locate provider program. Managing and maintaining the high level of integrity throughout the process was absolutely critical. And that's why we wanted to lend authority to the training standards process. So we created a training standard with this task force, as Ian was mentioning. And once that training standard was created, it was handed over to the Training Standards Committee, who built the training program based on that standard. And then they deliver it. They deliver it online. And any other training provider can seek the training standard to build their training program, and then it's submitted to utility safety partners for three-stage audit, independent audit. Once it passes the audit, then it receives endorsement by utility safety partners to be an endorsed training program, and they can market that as such. Now, beyond that, and Ian, I'm going to go back to you, that's one part of it, the training standard, and creating that standard and creating the training. But then you're not automatically ready to locate. Where did it go from there in terms of the audit process?
Yeah, it was, similar to the training standard. We assembled a bunch of SMEs and took our, current process, our current contracts, and asked the question, how are we going to be able to audit, new locators, excavators that are interested in becoming, partners in the ALP? How are we going to audit them to that standard? So it was similar, a lot of work. I think the thing, Mike, that, I want to add is, partnering with USP really allowed us through this whole process, and even to date, to get feedback from all our stakeholders. And, USP gave us the ability as we were doing this to share what we were working on, receive that feedback, and make meaningful changes, which is still something we're doing. So it really was, driven by SMEs, but large part based on all the feedback we had from the excavation community and, others that were working on this. The other thing we did do, Mike, as you're aware of, is we didn't just look at, an Alberta model here. We looked across the country. We looked over to Australia, New Zealand, different areas that had a similar project. And we really picked what was working well in those areas, incorporated them into what we were doing, and, made sure we address some of the unique challenges and requirements we have in Alberta through the process.
And that's also critical. That this was not done in a bubble. Clearly, it was not done in a bubble. We were wide open to engagement with other areas of the country and globally as well to manage this. So that's how we did it. But now, what is the ALP? It's not mandatory. And that's the key thing here. It's an option. And, Ian, maybe you can take us through this, how it is optional. It is not mandated.
No, from the get-go, we wanted this to be an option, not a requirement. And we recognize that, the ALP isn't for everyone out there, but for those that are interested in it, it's available to them. And the way we created this is it's just like placing any regular ticket. We wanted to keep it as simple and easy as possible for the end user. So, somebody that is interested in the ALP, when they're submitting a locate request through utility safety partners, they can select that ALP option.
So
the good thing sorry, go ahead, Mike.
It's important to underline that, and it is obviously bolded and underlined. The option, if the excavator decides to choose the option, then it's entirely up to them. It's almost like a contract they're making, that they are going to go through the ALP. Now, if they choose not to go through that option, it goes through the conventional methods as it always has been, and the consortium will locate. But I wanted just to clarify, this is optional.
Yeah, and Mike, to that point, we have some contractors that are, using a mix of both delivery methods for locates depending on their needs at the time. And, I think you have that highlighted here. It is not legislated and it is not mandatory. We really did want this to be an option to the excavation community. The one unique thing about this is there are no delivery time requirements, because I think the benefit of the ALP is it really establishes relationships between the contractor and the ALP locator that they are going to be utilizing. And it is up to those two parties to come, to agreement on the delivery times and the requirements for that job. A lot of people ask us, is this private locating? And it isn't, because there is a, requirement process to get audited, to have, meet certain orientation requirements, understand the utility requirements. And the one big important difference is all the approved ALP locators have access to all of the utilities GIS info, which is considerably different from private locators that typically don't have any access to the utility GIS data.
Now, to become we've talked about this already, you have to go through the orientation, you have to go through required training, you will be audited. Once you've cleared these hurdles, now your company name, access, etc., appears on Utility Safety Partners' website. You are a registered alternate locate service provider. And it's really as simple as that. If an excavator chooses that option and those ALSPs appear on our website, they reach out to the party they wish to work with. Simple as that. Now, to date, and Ian, I'll ask you to talk about this. We launched the project, the ALP, August 1st. And I'll let you speak to this.
Yeah, it's been quite successful since the launch. As you can see, we've had about 6% of all locate requests we've received have been through the ALP. And, where the success really is in these numbers is as we approach winter, it's given a lot of contractors more control over the locates, so they can, get their locates completed and work done before the snow and the ground freezes. So we're really, really impressed with those early numbers, Mike, as you know. Another thing, and I want to talk before we get to the 15 registered ALSPs, I want to talk about the locators, because to me, this is the most, impressive number and something I'm the proudest of. If you look, the consortium last year, we averaged about 280 locators at peak time. We've added another 120 locators to that locating pool. And, I think, Mike, you asked me this question once before, when have we ever been able to add that many locators? The answer is never. So we've really added a lot of locate capacity in Alberta. With those 118 locators, we have 15 unique new companies that are now able to safely complete locates on our behalf. And 26% of those locators are certified to locate through all 4 regions of the province. So it's a considerable addition to the locate resources that, the consortium directly employed.
And another number that's not on screen here is those 118 registered ALP locators are out of a pool currently at 167 potential. The additional 50-ish have not gone through orientation or haven't completed audit yet, but they are in the queue. So when you think of that number of 280 or roughly 300, we're adding 50% more locate capacity in Alberta, and the option is simply going to increase. When you maintain the integrity of the damage prevention process, the locating and marking process, and you give the excavator the option to go and select the ALP. Now, let's face it, they're absorbing the cost of locating themselves, but they're passing that cost on to whoever the proponent is of that excavation project or of that project. So it adds a lot of capacity. You're maintaining the integrity and you're increasing, obviously, the capacity as well. So it's been a win-win-win all the way around.
Yeah, to add to that, Mike, one of the things we heard so much at the CCGA this year was that it created some things that we can't put data around. The locators are working almost side by side with the excavator as they go through their job. They are working side by side with the companies that they're locating for. And it is creating such quality of job as well as a trust, because they get to tell them, they get to talk right on the site. They've got the time to have those conversations, say, hey, something's just not right here, or I'm getting a bad signal, or whatever. But it has created such an end result. Fact is, I think earlier we were having the discussion about damages. Have we even registered a damage under this new program?
No, Deb, I was going to speak to that. I think one of the bonuses and like you said, the feedback we're receiving is it really does improve the communication between the locator and the excavator, which that leads to improved safety. So running some numbers this morning just based on the percent that went through and, my hits per 1,000 locates, I should have had 4 hit gas lines as a result of this. And to date, we have 0 and 0 near misses as a result of the locates completed through the ALP. So it's really proven to be, not just a benefit or an efficiency. It is building upon safety and improving safety out there for both the locator and the excavator.
Now, before we move to the next portion of our time here today with the damage prevention professional, we got a couple of minutes for questions. I don't know, Tyler, if there's anything you want to filter through to us right now.
I'm seeing lots of comments in the chat, but I'm not seeing a lot of questions yet.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Yep, Mike, there's one question here. They're asking if hits or near misses are reported to the DIRT function so that you can measure the success of what you're trying to do.
Yeah, in fact, this is actually a number I'm proud of. As some of you who have been around a long time like me, the DIRT report, it's interesting. There's some good data there, but unless you have mandatory damage reporting, you're only looking at damages that have been reported. And the Canadian Common Ground Alliance produces its own DIRT report. Alberta has the highest number of registered DIRT submitters in the country, and not by a small margin, but by a very wide margin. And so in that regard, yes, we have a very high number of reporting entities. It also makes us look like we're a bunch of cowboys and we're damaging stuff left and right. That's not the case, actually. When you consider the number of DIRT submitters relative to the damages, we actually have the lowest number of damages per submitter. So it's interesting data. We've discovered that the online locate request process reduces damages in and of itself because the excavator is actually going on to online and mapping their dig site according to the map, and rather than interpreting that to somebody else on a phone call, and the damages have been are 50% greater if there is a locate request and it's made by phone rather than the web. And then we add this, it's early days yet, but you've already heard Ian say that to date there have been no damages where an ALP locator has been on site. So so far so good. It's interesting to see that.
One more question here. How can ALP be introduced into the United States?
It's really up to the digging community and the utility owners, providing state legislation allows it. I'm not familiar with all the intricacies of the various state legislation, but that's a part of a discussion we had here. Because we have an absence of what I'll refer to as comprehensive damage prevention legislation, it perhaps allowed us the flexibility to introduce this. And there's been so many changes to the damage prevention process in terms of how to create a locate request and the increase of data integrity, you name it. But there's been virtually no changes at all to the locating and marking process until now in Alberta. So its time has come. With that,
Mike, maybe before we move on, I see one question in there from Raymond, about ALPs being able to locate large gas pipelines as well. Our approved ALP locators are allowed to locate all our facilities like any other locator working directly for us. So yes, they are able to locate our large gas pipelines.
And with that, the most large diameter transmission pipelines are governed either provincially or federally. And I know there are a number of federally regulated pipeline companies on our board of directors that are looking at the ALP option. It's not uncommon that they allow contractors, locating contractors to locate their assets, but they are looking at the ALP. With that, I'd like to move to the damage prevention professional and turn this over to my friends Deb Shelley and Jeff Mulligan. And I'll stop sharing my screen, or actually I just let them take over. I won't do anything in case they click the wrong button.
Yeah. Let Tyler drive, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, guys, although we're switching subjects, we're really not. This is all under, of course, the USP window, and it's about how we actually develop standards and deliver it to an industry. And our industry is damage prevention, really, in all its different formats out there. And one of the things that have become industry recognized is that we do not have a professional designation for damage prevention. And yet we know that every single one of you guys that are on here are doing this daily. And we need to create some way to be able to, number one, recognize all the roles and responsibilities for a variety of reasons here, but also so that as our life cycle of employment changes, as we all know it is, in probably the next 10 to 15 years, it really changes. We need to have a career path where people are looking at the valuable work that we do and saying, hey, we want to do that, and that they can start to work towards that particular role. So Jeff and I have been out there talking about this and really trying to get some information on whether our industry needs a damage prevention professional. And really what it is just a multidisciplined, recognized professional designation that, again, provides a consistency on what is required by that role and what you have to be able to know or be able to do. So when we look at that, we started to go out and ask our industry. And in Alberta, we're lucky we have an ambassador program, as well as all the things that we have done on other areas that actually goes out and does a lot of queries. Here's where we're seeing one of the queries on the screen from our ambassadors that show that anytime we're out there in industry, a good 80% of the people are saying to us, well, actually, and I think this one's showing almost 90% of the people are saying, we need this program. We really need something out there. And you know what? It's such a huge picture. And Jeff, you brought up at the CCGA the fact of how this is so unique. It's not like safety, right?
Yeah, and certainly at the and to be clear, Deb and I wear two hats in this discussion. We lead and own large safety companies in Canada, and Deb, in her case, worldwide. We also, our role here today is we are the chair and the vice chair of the Training Standards Committee within the USP governance model. And this is where this work is going to land, and this is where this work is being done by a much vaster group of stakeholders than ourselves. But yeah, we saw at the recent CCGA conference, we also saw over 90% of the people, 87.5 said, yes, it is time for this type of program. And another 6% said they just needed some more information. But at the end of the day, I came from a finance, I was in the financial institution business and government. And when I came into this space, I saw a bunch of professionals who are very disciplined and very skilled, but there was no recognition of who was at what level or who had what designation. We had safety designations like crazy in the safety space, but in damage prevention, there really was nothing. There was this huge hole, and I couldn't figure out how these people got accredited, how we recognized who held what level of skills, what their commitment was to ongoing professional development. And it struck me that we were not treating the industry professionals in this sector appropriately, nor the major stakeholders. So with that, we embarked on this discussion and fact-finding mission, and this is where we have arrived at today. That close to 90% of the people we talk to are supportive. All the regulators are supportive. All the industry stakeholders from all the disciplines are saying, yeah, it's time for this. And how do we move forward? And so we'll talk a little bit today about that.
Yeah, And so what you're seeing now is that we're actually on the action path. It's no longer a concept that we're testing in the market. And we released out of course the last conference kind of a layout of what we're seeing our organization look like. And what you're going to see in the organization, and you can flip slides there for me, Tyler, is the fact that it's held in a way that every part of the industry has input. Now, this is just a draft based on what we're seeing within the Training Standards Committee of what works and what doesn't work. But here it's held by those various positions. As we start to develop content, it'll be by subject matter industry or subject matter experts, it'll be by industry, and you'll even see as we end this program where we ask you guys to get involved. But this is kind of an overall look at what this looks like. So
And I think, Deb, the key thing here is we can't lay something onto industry nor contractors or people that is, you know, another university education requirement, another, you know, another 2 years of intense day-to-day training. This had to be reasonable with the expectations of industry for what overhead they were willing to invest in this type of a certification. And what we're seeing is, you know, we did some polling and we're doing some more survey work and discussions, but what we're seeing is somewhere in that 6 to 8 days a year of dedicated time being dedicated to training of this type, while people earn over a 2-year or 3-year period their full designation under the DPP program.
yeah, absolutely, Jeff. It's so important that we've got this in a way, and it covers, like I said, that multidiscipline or the industry. And you'll see this is again just a draft, but there'll be some core required programs that's based on the industry, but then there'll be electives. So if you want to be a DPP and you're a line locator, if you want to specialize in deep facilities or in the shallow or telecommunications, maybe you're a regulator. But either way, the electives will allow you to specialize in certain areas, and it'll always have that ongoing maintenance. So it'll have a CEU requirement and the capability for you to be able to show that continued experience gathering that you do every day on your job, and that applies towards your designation.
It's interesting as we cast a bigger net with the program and talk to a wider range of stakeholders like overhead asset owners, overhead utility owners. All of a sudden, the area of emergency responders and first responders became an area that you might have a special elective for those types of resources. Whereas on the pure ground disturbance or damage prevention buried utility side, that's not as prevalent in the discussions. So as we cast a bigger net, we get more stakeholders into the tent. We're seeing that there is a vast array of electives that could complement the core program.
Yeah. So in saying that, we've got some milestones out there, and yes, some of them are pretty aggressive, but you got to start somewhere. So this is really where we've started. I actually am going to start a little bit in the middle where we say that we're going to liaison and communicate with the industry. This is where we start to put the people together to start to establish curriculum and what it looks like. What is the actual process that we go through? And we also have to align to what we call common industry standards. So as you get a designation, I mean, there's even conversation, do we call it a designation? Do we call it a certification? All of those have standards behind them that we need to be able to meet in order to be able to be viewed as a credible and respected certification. So this happens all the way through the timeline. And then starting, of course, now, it's establishing those channels for communication and interaction with the industry. What industry stakeholder groups do we need? And then from there, we're electing them. We kind of showed you a bit of that, what we're envisioning for that organization. And then from there, we'll be hiring. It's got to have somebody who is an executive director who's actually dedicated to this cause because it's got a lot of moving wheels to it. And then from there, it's continuing down the line from being able to create the product, being able to get it out there, being able to have it recognized. And we hope probably by January 2026 to be able to start to accept people into the program.
And
And yet,
some people might say, Deb, that, again, why USP? And after Ian's accolades for USP and their positioning, it seems like we're all cheering for Mike today. But the reality is simply this, that, when you launch and land a program like this, and it needs to be administered, and it needs to have high integrity, it needs to have stability, it needs to have monetary support. You have to find the right place to land a professional designation, professional association certification. And it's not with a for-profit consulting company. It's not with a government-funded agency, because those things shift and change and would put at peril the entire program. So when you look at somebody like Utility Safety Partners, they're in the damage prevention business. That's their mandate. Their stakeholders will likely be the people who employ the lion's share of DPP designated certified people. And at the end of the day, it's the only one that can stand up and say, we're not going to be susceptible to government funding. We're not going to be doing this in a for-profit thing, so we might favor this industry over that industry. This is what USP does, and their very structure lends itself to landing this designation and people knowing that if I get this designation in 2 years, I know that this entity will exist in 10 and 15. And so really important that we utilize a platform like the USP model to land this program and stabilize it in a sustainable way.
yeah, so true, Jeff. And to land on that even more, when you look at it, USP as well has got some experience as well in what I call licensing the standard out. So not only do we have a standard in Alberta, but the standard operates in other provincial jurisdictions. And we're even looking at right now some international jurisdictions. So it's all about the fact of being able to hold the credibility of the standard and yet making it work. And wherever you are, whatever industry you are, whatever location you are, or under what regulator. So
and perhaps to be clear on the core programs and the electives, some of those, but not all of those, will be standards put in place by Utility Safety Partners, by the DPP Governing Council. However, that doesn't mean that a good course, a good program, or an equivalent won't be approved under the administration side as eligible to be one of those courses. We have the vehicle to be able to issue the standards and authorize and endorse courses, but by the same token, we're not here to reinvent the wheel. We want to build momentum quicker rather than slower. And if there is good content and solid programming in place and/or webinars or courses, whatever it might be, they'll have a channel to come through to be evaluated and be included in the program.
Yeah. Well, and I noticed a question in here, Jeff, that says, work with the locate equipment manufacturers to create certification levels. The locate manufacturers are very much a part of this. And that's one of the things we've had in Alberta. It's the challenge to be able to get a professional designation for locators out there. Part of this, as you see down the electives, is you can see in the future where this is actually going to become a possibility under a select designation here. And for various reasons, our governments aren't onboarding this as a trade or a designation, but we can under USP. So all things start to come together, and we will always involve the stakeholders such as the manufacturers.
And locating is just one aspect of what we're doing. We're talking about all business disciplines, all professional disciplines as they relate to damage prevention, from ownership to excavation right through to locating, and the full range of people that could want a specialized designation that recognizes the area in which they perform their work.
Yeah. All right. So as we look at that, one of the things, again, I really want to highlight is that, when we start to talk safety, we don't even have a great way under damage prevention to be able to, how do I say this, Jeff, to go through and capture the differences even in how we deal with an incident. So you shared some stories out there and how in safety we localize it. It's up to a person that gets hurt. It's a site that's impacted. Whereas when we talk about damage prevention, we're talking a much bigger consequence model here.
Yeah, I mean, when you see, and I had a terrible incident happen when I was on the board of directors of a university where a fella fell off a scaffold and impaled himself on on some rebar, and he died instantly at the site. It was a terrible circumstance, and it was terrible for his family and anybody who was there. But the people just 4 blocks away in the downtown of that town were unaware of that event. It was totally localized to that job site. However, when you come to damage prevention, if somebody cuts a fiber optic cable 400 miles from here, we were out of business for an entire day and our hospital had to stop surgeries immediately. That's damage prevention. That's why we do what we do. The effect is not localized. It's often not planned. It's usually at an emergency undertaking, and there's the ramifications to society, to the cost, and to industry can be felt miles and miles away from the event. So the need for us to professionalize every aspect of work that's done in this field, and many of you are doing that today as part of what you do. But we need to be able to recognize those people for their own career pathing, for their company's integrity of their systems and their assets, and be able to move forward in a more professionally recognized manner around North America.
Absolutely. All right, so part of that Training Standards Committee, and as we have talked all over the place, is our industry involvement. So Tyler, if you can start to put that poll up. One of the things that we ask for all the time is for industry involvement. And you're going to see a poll come up, and we're going to ask you if you've got some time within your organization or even personally where you can help us on this. And we've kind of got 3 sides to this. One is put me on the team. It's just you or your organization is committed to damage prevention and you're excited to kind of assist us. The second was I've got some expertise. I might not be able to have the ability to help in all of this, but I've got some areas of expertise. And the last one is just keep me in the loop. So if you could help us out and you could fill out that poll response that you're currently seeing in the chat right now. And then we should be able to see some of the results in here. All right, that means you guys actually have to respond in here. I'm seeing one person. There we go. Now we're starting to see some responses.
Yeah, no, and that's, really what we want to see. The success of this program will rely on the breadth and the varied nature of the people that we capture in this net and bring into this tent, and then we can create the momentum faster and we can cover more of the disciplines.
Yeah, well, and that's exactly what Ian was talking about. It's why it takes so long, because you want to involve all the industries in here. You need to understand the impact of certain areas and be able to make it accessible to all in that want that. So, at the end of the day, this is about almost a call to action. All right, so I'm starting to see that.
And we're seeing, Deb, as well, the growing support with regulators, industry associations. Those kinds of organizations are saying, we see the need for this, but we can't do this initiative. Industry has to do this initiative. USP has to take this initiative on. The regulator can't. They can support it, but they can't offer it. It's not their area of responsibility. But strong support from government regulators. And that community, which is critically important as we go forward.
All right, as it starts to slow down a little bit, I'm going to ask you, while we just finish the last few and do some question answers here, that you pull out your phones, and Ben King is our administrator on the Training Standards Committee. His email is on the slide right now. And all I want you to do, I don't need you to write any note to him, is just in the subject line, put your vote down, put me on the team. I have expertise, or keep me in the loop. And the reason why is that keeps you in the loop. We will make sure that we've got you on the feed, that you're constantly seeing the communications as to where we are. And I've also noticed in here that some people are not being able to respond. So this makes sure that your information is being captured right here. So make
And
this
yeah,
easy.
we're gonna have Ben, he's putting that data together from the other stops that we've made, and Deb and Ben and I, we reach out and we're in contact virtually every week. And we'll be working on appropriate communication and appropriate ways to post to a website or to our USP page to provide updates, ongoing updates for the DPP.
All right. So as you guys go to fill out that, both Jeff and I's contacts are here as well. But please ask any questions that you've got. Here's the time to do that. Anything to add, Ian and Mike, while we're waiting?
If I can just re-emphasize, and I mentioned this in the chat as well, the damage prevention professional designation is something that its time has come. I've been in this industry for over 30 years with the regulator, private enterprise, and now with nonprofit. And, safety professional, environmental stewardship, that was solved decades ago. And those are defined curriculums at the post-secondary level. And yet there are so many complementary roles and responsibilities for damage prevention on every project, on every application, you name it. And they need to be mapped, they need to be captured, and kudos given, whether it's credits given to recognize those roles. And if that can be bundled into a damage prevention professional, then so much the better.
And I think, Mike, we talked about way back in a taxi cab where this conversation took place, and you were mentioning that the other day.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's definitely been talked about in our industry for a long time. And like you said, Mike, it's time for it.
But once we formed USP, once USP came to the forefront, we began to see clearly we now had a vehicle that was capable of doing this. Prior to that, we didn't have the combined vision and mandate, quite frankly. And so, and now we're there.
I agree.
All right. I think that that's about it. I'm not seeing any further questions in here, guys. Anybody else seeing something I've missed?
No, I say stay tuned. We've got a lot we're going to do and a lot we're taking on in the next little while. And anybody who wants to engage with the group, we'll certainly be reaching out. And there's lots of work for all of us.
Awesome.
Yeah, and with that, I want to thank Ian and Jeff and Debbie for joining us today, and obviously for everybody who joined online today. Certainly appreciate the engagement, and there's so much we can do when there's people put their heads together. The person alone, there are limitations to what you can accomplish, but as a collective group, there's nothing that can't be accomplished. And that's one of the things I really enjoy about working with Utility Safety Partners is the multitude of people and the meaningful engagement we get from our members and our partners in safety in the province of Alberta and really across the globe. So thank you for joining us, and I'll let you take it from here, Tyler.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks to all of you, our panelists, and our moderator for sharing your expertise. Please take a moment now to fill out a brief survey that will be posted in the chat so we can continue to improve these discussions and address topics that are important to you. Be sure to register for next month's Town Hall by visiting our website. Again, thank you for joining us, and we will see you next month.